Oiling my hair chat today. I just came back from work and I had like the most mentally intense day of my life, and nothing actually genuinely happened. But I was on my way to work, and I don't know, I just got so I would felt so mentally off. I think I was like processing stuff in the morning, and I just felt so bad, just like having the worst anxiety attack. Actually, it was already starting before I was going to work, and I just felt like literally like my sense of self was just splitting off into a million pieces, and like not it's so hard to put into this is so dramatic, but I was like it literally felt I was like, who even am I don't know what was going on, but I don't know. But anyways, and then I was having to go to work in the midst of that, and I was just like so like just distraught. I sat down on the sidewalk and I just started like crying, and I was like, please don't make me go to work. I have to be like on, and I'm just feeling so like weird on the inside. But I powered through, and it was hard in like the first half of my job. I went to one of my nanny jobs, and I took the kid I nanny to the park and all these things, and it was cute. It was very fun. She met a new friend, and it was very sweet. And then I just started to feel better, which I knew was gonna happen, but in the moment I was like, I was genuinely like, I think I'm having a mental breakdown. Like I think this is it for me. I don't even know. I was just having the most intense like moment of my life. I was just like, oh my god. But then by the time I got off work, I didn't even notice it happening. Like I just forgot that I felt bad, and I was just like focused on what I was doing, which actually that usually does happen while I'm at work. So, but by the time I left, it was crazy. I was like, I feel like the best I've ever felt in my entire life, no joke. I was like, mentally now, I literally, this is like genuinely probably the most like contained and just like stable and just seeing the world in like a non overstimulated way that I've felt in like literal years. So that was pretty that was a pretty interesting turn of events. Also while I was at work, I read The Kid That I Nanny, that book, The Little Engine That Could. You know, where like the kid basically like this train like breaks down, and then they're looking and looking for a train to like basically help them to get to the other side of the hill or whatever. And there's like none of the engines are saying yes because they're like, well, I'm too good for that, or like, you know, that's not the kind of train that I am. And they're all making excuses to why they can't take this train to the other side. And then there was one little train that was like, you know, everybody, I think everyone knows the story, but they were like, I'll do it. And the whole way up, they're like, I think I can. And on the way down, they're like, they did it. And then on the way down, they're like, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could. And it was just, it made me feel motivated too. It was making me think of my day and also the project I'm trying to do right now. And just making, because I think I was also just like, I've been working on this like personal project, and it's been so mentally, I think today was a really mentally intense day for my project. Because it just, I feel like so much has gone wrong in my life that I feel like I've gotten so many little messages from the world, or not from the world, but from, it felt like there were so many moments where it was just kind of like, hey, like, don't keep trying, just give up. And I just like keep trying, and sometimes I get really in my head about whether it's worth it to continue trying to do the things I'm trying to do. But I just keep doing it, and sometimes I get in my head like, well, like maybe I just suck and I don't know anything at all. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think that in moments like that where I just like, I think, but I also have had so many moments in my mental health journey where I was like, you know, oh my god, like this is the end. Like I just feel so bad. I feel so like I literally felt like I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna continue on with my day or like my life. Like it was that drastic feeling. Like a few hours ago, I was like, I feel like I'm literally splitting into a million pieces internally. I feel like my body's on fire, my brain is on fire. It was just like crazy. And I was like, what if this is like the moment before I go down some it's an insane like mental spiral, and this is just like it. Classic anxiety attack thought process. But I do feel like that's just a consistent sort of thought process for me, and then I just do something that like works, or I do something and I get better, and it's like, whoa. And I think so much of my journey has just been me being like, oh, okay like that. I actually like I did that, but I actually am starting to get better like on the inside, and that's pretty crazy. There's hairbands. I feel like I just keep chugging along. I don't know. I was just like you got to just keep chugging along and just keep on going, and things just have this random way of just like you think you're at your worst and all of a sudden it's just like whoa, you're just at your best. And I think I was just thinking about how I was having this whole conversation with myself about how I think that sometimes I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about the process that I'm going through right now. First of all, it's been like probably the most vulnerable period of my entire life. Like painfully vulnerable. Like I feel like I just keep going into like the deepest parts of myself and just sort of flipping them and just like being in this weird sort of moment of just flipping all of these things about myself. And I don't know, there's like been like personal things occurring and just like also um just I think that I just have now at the point where it's like I can't hold on to the sort of thought processes that I had in the past and I've just been letting them go. And that's been really intense actually. And I think also I think I've just been feeling really called on the inside to be like my most honest sort of self. Um like I came out to someone really important in my life recently that I never came out to, and I was just like, you know what? Like no, like I feel like in this next period of my life, like I just need to be like really honest about who I am and just be at like the most like pure essential version of me, because like that's just the person that needs to sort of do this next part of life for me. You know, I can't, I don't know, I've just been feeling like I just need to just be honest and not sort of and yeah, and just continue doing the things that feel authentic to me. I think that like so much of my past, I think like I just got so lost in like these sort of hangups and thought processes that I saw from other people, and I think I really like I think they just got me really down sometimes. Like they made me feel really sort of lost and confused and just like what. And I think that like I have just been feeling like I feel like when you want to do something different and you want to change and you want to change the world and you want to change your life, like you just have to meet yourself at like a really honest and really vulnerable place. And it gets really dark I think sometimes because it's just I feel like I've been seeing in my life, like I feel like sometimes like all this muck just starts coming out. Like I think that there's like this purging period before you do something really cool and really beautiful where just like it's just muck and just dirt, and all this dirt from your life is just coming up and just throwing itself right in your face, because it's kind of like all these subconscious things that you've had going on like underneath, you know, like on like in the deeper parts of yourself that you just kind of like lived with, or they were just sort of on the side, you know, just going along. And it's just like no, at this point, like if you want to actually go forth and be like a new sort of version of yourself, like you have to deal with the muck and you have to I think for me like it's more like you have to react to the muck in a different way. I don't know if anyone's into human design. I love all those little things that are just sort of like just you know spirituality, sort of, you know, astrology, all that. It's I just think it's fun. I think it's like a fun way to just explore myself. But I if you're into human design, I am a generator, so it means that I manifest by reacting to the world. Okay, if you don't know anything about human design, it doesn't really matter. I'll explain. But basically, so I always sort of like lingered on that. Was like, what does that mean for me? And then I started realizing that like I think that, and I think this is probably the case for everyone. I don't think it's just me being a special type or anything like that. I just think it's fun to think about. But I was like, I do think that like the way that you react to the things that you react to are gonna start like bringing your reality in for you. And if you're constantly reacting to the negative sort of things that people are saying about you, or negative things that are going on in your life, and you react with this like, oh my god, they're right, or oh my god, this is so true, like you just sort of get lost. I don't know, I think you just start to like live in that, and that just becomes the reality that you are living in. And Yeah, I don't know. I had a really difficult conversation with somebody in my life that was really important to me, and it just went in a difficult direction. And I don't know. We just had these back and forth issues for the longest time, and I just had this thought process today that I was like, just because somebody has like a perception of you, I think that if you spend your time sitting there, living in it, stewing in it, feeling bad about it, and all these things, it's just a waste of time. Like, you're not like somebody's judgment of you, and if you keep reacting to somebody's judgment of you and being like, and really getting like immersed in it, and it's just like, I was like, that's just, it's not you. Like, that's not who you are. That's just that person's perception of you, that person's judgment of you. And like, it's okay for them to have that judge. I think sometimes we just have to this has been like my thought process on everything recently. Sometimes you just have to let people have their opinion of you, and you just have to let people have their judgment of you, and you have to let people have their judgment of the world, and you just have to be okay with it. You have to be okay with it. They're gonna keep having it. Like, it doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that they're wrong or that anything like that. But if you want different and you want a different outcome, you can't sit there and just identify with it and just be lost in this sort of judgment and these sorts of opinions that people have of you, because of course no judgment is going to be 100% the truth. My own judgment is not 100% the truth, and I just feel like I for a long time got in the cycle of with this person where I just was always trying to sort of change their judgment of me or change their perception of me, and I couldn't do it. It's like, because that's just their perception and that's their judgment, and it doesn't mean that's me. That's something that they're going to work through, and you shouldn't so, I feel like you end up sitting there and contributing to that judgment when you do that, and I've had other I'm also been even having other conversations with people who are in a similar situation, and just seeing that reflected as well in my conversations with about what they're having in their life. And I think, yeah, I just think there's like beauty and also just being like, just allowing, just full straight up allowing, just allow people to have their 100% judgment or their 100% belief, and just be like, okay, and I'm just gonna be different. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you can keep having the judgment, and it's just gonna keep not being true, and I'm gonna keep being different and just keep living the life that I'm living. And you know what I mean? Like, I think it just like, I think just allowing, and I think that that's gotten me so much further in like the last few months, because I'm working on this project that I think like so much of the reason that things don't get done sometimes, I don't know. I think that I just, how to put it, the reason I think that this particular information never got out, the information that I'm trying to find, is that I think people trust each other's. I think there's this sort of judgment about, I won't go all into it, but I think that like it's something that people I think have a lot of skepticism towards, the thing that I'm trying to study right now. But it's also close to something personal that happened in my life, and something that I was like, I believe that it's true because I had a very similar experience, so that's why I'm interested in studying it. And I think that I was just like, I think that if you just, there were so many opportunities, I think, for me to look at everything that happened in my life, all of the narratives that I picked up about my experience and about my like mental illness and all these things, and to just keep being like, oh, you're just a little bit loopy, like don't keep going after it, don't keep trying, because like, and just sort of internalizing these judgments that I also picked up over the course of my life about my narrative and my experience. And it's like, if you were to do that, and if you were to just always be like 100% all in on people's judgments about you, you're not going to get far, because I wouldn't keep going if I was to just keep believing people's judgment of me and perception of me. And that's why I was like, I think that it's really important to just look at like, to just let people have their judgment. Don't sit there and try to change it. I think like it's not worth my time. Also, I think like sometimes I think along this project I felt illegitimate. I've felt like not smart enough. I've felt this and this and that. And I think sometimes we get lost in trying to prove to people that we're legitimate, or trying to prove to people that we're smart enough, trying to prove to people that we're different than they think, or that the situation is different, and you sit there and you try to prove it to them, and it's like, you're not gonna, people are just, I think people sometimes will meet your desire to do that with just more resistance. And I think that sometimes it's important to just be like okay with the fact that people are going to have their perception of whatever it is that you're doing or perception of you or whatever, and just be like, that's fine. Just keep having it. And it doesn't mean that you're going to operate on that judgment. Like, it doesn't mean, you know, let's say somebody thinks you're, this is not an example for me, I'm just making one up, but let's say someone thinks you're like, you're lazy. Okay, if someone, let's say someone thinks you're lazy, and they just are looking at everything you do and being like, are you really gonna sit down again? Are you really that lazy? You're gonna like, and you're like, I'm not, I'm just exhausted, I've been working all day. Now you're looking at me and thinking I'm lazy, right? You're just gonna get, you're not gonna get very far trying to convince that person that you're not lazy. You're just gonna have to be like, okay, yeah, I am lazy, you know, sure, go for it. Like, you can keep thinking it, and I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. And it, you know, you're not, I think, like, you're not gonna, you are naturally, knowing that that's not a true judgment of you, you're naturally not gonna produce lazy results by being you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that we get so afraid of people's judgment and that we're gonna keep sort of proving them right. And I think it's like, they're, if you think they're wrong, don't even give a second thought to it. Just keep going, and then like the truth will just speak for itself through your actions rather than you sitting there and trying to convince people like what you are or anything like that. I think that's really just the way to go about it. I actually have been talking to a friend who is in a similar situation where I'm not going to say all the details because it's her situation, but basically she is having like she keeps going to want to try to fix a situation, and in trying to fix the situation it's just making the situation worse because it's just adding to sort of like the point. And I think that a lot of times we get people like, we get in these dynamics with people where we just get obsessed with trying to fix their perception, and it just doesn't work, and you're just like looping it, and then you're just feeling worse and worse about yourself. And something that my, okay, I never got an official OCD diagnosis. I got one that was like unspecified compulsive disorder, but my psychiatrist back then was a pretty bad psychiatrist. But anyways, but I just ended up learning how to manage because I learned about exposure therapy, and I learned that basically, like, let's say you have I think this is something that like people use for OCD, but I think it can work on all sorts of like mental processes. I use this across the board. But let's say you think you're like obsessed with like, you know, if you don't uh flip the light switch on 10,000 times, like, you know, your family, your relative might die, right? So you're obsessed with, you have this obsessive anxiety that your family member is going to die. So basically, like, instead of usually if somebody has an anxiety, you sort of console them. You're like, no, that's not true. Like, it's not going to happen. That's actually the opposite of what you should do with OCD. Like, people actually end up, like, you end up getting obsessed with like checking and validating, so that it ends up being not the best thing to do for people's OCD, because they'll just keep coming back for the check, the validation. What you're supposed to do for yourself is you're supposed to be like, you know what? My family member is going to die. And you have to sit with the anxiety, and you have to just be like, they are going to die actually. And you have to expose yourself to the fear, right? And that has helped me like minimize and even completely eliminate all sorts of little compulsions that I had over the years. For vulnerability's sake, you see, if you watch my videos, I think you can tell I have a central anxiety about being being crazy, or having like losing my grip on my mind. And I went through a period where anytime that I had like any kind of burst or drop in energy, I was convinced that I was having psychosis, I was bipolar, I was manic. I had this, like, this was like years ago, like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and I would instantly go start scrolling, and I would just start like reading a bunch of articles and trying to see, like, I'd read them like all the time. And I had to start to tell myself, like, you know what? You are psychotic right now. Like, yes, you are manic. And then it's just like, when you put it like that, it's like, what is I think the whole thing is like, what is so wrong with that? Like, what is like, okay, like, let's say, yeah, you are in the middle of a psychotic episode right now. It's like, you're still you. What's gonna happen? Everyone's gonna leave you. Like, you know, you're gonna like what's gonna really happen? Like, that's just like, you know what I mean? I think that's the thing, is that sometimes like we get so lost in trying to fix something like an anxiety, and it's like, okay, if you just accept the anxiety and are just like, yep, that's true, it's like, oh, nothing really changed and my life is actually still the same. And I've been trying to, I haven't found a good way to explain that to this person yet. I think it's kind of hard to explain and get people really to listen sometimes, but I think that's really the best way to go about an obsessive desire to fix somebody's mind about you, where it's like, sometimes we get so lost in trying to like I'm just going to keep trying again, like, keep reaching out to the person, apologize again, all these things, like you just keep going to try to fix, and trying to fix it gets worse. And it's like you kind of at some point got to be like, let's say, like, I've got plenty of examples of this in my life. Like, I feel it's like, it's like this person thinks I'm annoying, they hate me. You got to be like, you know what? Yeah, they do think you're annoying and they do actually hate you. And it's like, okay, just keep going. That's cool. Like, I think it's just like just accepting it and minimizing that fear of like, yeah, this person hates me, or, like this person thinks I'm lazy. It's like, oh no, my boss thinks I'm lazy. It's like your boss does think you're lazy. What now? You're already working maximum amount to try to not be lazy. So it's like, okay, like, it's just things like that where it's like you just have to meet it with like acceptance and just be like, yeah, they do actually think that. And like don't keep trying to fix it. I just think truth really speaks for itself. I think truth, no matter what, it wants to come out. Like truth will legitimately just start to speak for itself. And I think that it's good because I think you should just always be truthful to you, be truthful to like your most authentic self. Be authentic, just do what you care. And if people aren't aren't reflecting your own perception of you back to you, that's fine. You can have, I think you are just allowed to have your own perception of yourself. You have the most information, you have the most knowledge on yourself. You are literally the leading expert on yourself, and everybody else is not an expert on you. And they're probably not an expert on whatever it is you're talking about, whatever it is you're interested in. Like you're probably like the most knowledgeable person about you, or if you're into some niche interest, you're probably the most knowledgeable person on that niche interest. And I think it's like we go around waiting for other people to mirror back to us what we want them to see about us, and it's like sometimes they won't, but it's not because it's not true. I think just going back to being truthful to yourself and just operating authentically is just really important. Yeah. And I think it's fun to surprise people as well. I think the fun thing, I think like if you just let people have judgments about you, you're going to surprise people because you're going to keep on chugging along like the little engine that could, and you're just going to do your own thing and just be authentic to you, and that's naturally going to start to create some pretty surprising results that people are not going to be expecting, right? And so then it's fun, and who cares after that if they still think that this and this not whatever, but then you're still producing those really interesting sort of results that you've produced from being you and being authentic, and etc etc etc. So that's the thing. It's like people's judgment truly says nothing except for what their calculation of the world is, and if you have a different calculation of the world, who's to say you're not right? Like you might just have different information. I think it's just important to not be obsessed with other people's calculations of you or the world or anything like that. I think sometimes we even get too obsessed with like our sort of collective conclusions about the world and our sort of like societal expectations or societal sort of obsessions with what's real and what's not, and just like what's like the like esteemed thing, what's the best thing. And I think so going through the process of my traumatic experience has shown me so much about like the world and society and all these things that we think are just so like, I think that certain people have this real attachment to like, if something is like very like, you have 8,000 degrees, then they're like, they are the smartest people, or they are, more, their words are of more value. Or this is one that I've been thinking about a lot recently, the justice system. One of the reasons that I kept going with this project is that, so I am very interested in dissociative identity disorder, and I was reading all of these stories about why it's so controversial, and I was reading about how a lot of people at one point in time, like there's this controversy where people went off to court to talk about abuse that they had recovered memories from their dissociative identity disorder, and then it didn't go through in the courts, and then the court sort of, it's sort of like people were like, oh yeah, their therapist just sort of like convinced them that they had dissociative identity disorder. It was this whole thing. Granted, that does happen. There are people with also personality disorders, like facetious disorder, where they are just sort of lie and make things up and all these things, right? But I was looking at that and I was like, to be honest, having gone through a trial myself against the person who abused me and seeing how often, like, it was, my words were just absolutely twisted around, and just everything was just taken so, like they would just throw it right back at you. I don't think, like, particularly in a university setting, they do not, I don't think they really want survivors of any kind of abuse to really succeed. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really think that they wanted me to succeed at all, and they really twisted my story a lot, it felt like, and didn't really twist, they didn't really go hard on the person that I was going sort of against. Not to say all the details. But anyways, so that really, I was like, that was a real eye opener for me. And first of all, it really showed me that, like, I was looking at these sorts of, like, trials that were sort of, it's like, oh, this is one reason why we think dissociative identity disorder is not real. And I was like, first of all, if you have ever taken your abuser to court, you will know that, like, the justice system, as much as it's supposed to be like, they know everything, they're so, like, fair and real and all these things, it's like, they will twist your words right up in your face. How many trials have we seen against, rapists that are just like, well, he's got a big, bright future ahead of him, so we're just gonna give him what, community service, 3 months prison, whatever. How is that the most fair thing? Or also, there's so many cases of, like, black people possessing marijuana and they go to prison for 20 years, and then, like, people who are, like, white school shooters, they'll be going to, like, they had mental illness, so, we're gonna let them off from, like, killing a bunch of innocent children. And it's like, they are not, just because they are, these esteemed little guys with, like, wigs and, like, robes and all this thing, does not mean that they know they're, like, these, like, pinnacles of intelligence and fairness and all these things. They are extremely biased all the time. They are also moved by their whims and their emotions, and also their privileged position often in society. And I think that we hopefully are getting to a place in society where it's like, we need to stop looking at people who have, because they have wealth, they have degrees, they have all these things, and be like, they are just, like, they are the ones who are going to tell us the real truth about the world. There's a lot of, I've learned so much more truth about the world from people with no degrees sometimes. Like, I think that, like, it's really not, I think, like, I've just, like, and I've had such an attachment in the past, I think, to that kind of thing. Like, I wanted to have, like, the most, like, highest degrees and, like, all these things, you know what I mean? And I've just been learning over time, I think, having gone through this particular traumatic experience, that I was like, that stuff really doesn't mean much at all in a way. Like, I think that there's so often, just because those are people are, like, we've given them that stamp of approval, does not mean necessarily that they are going to be, like, you should stop, that you should sort of ignore your own truth and ignore the value of your words because they don't approve. And I think, like, also, just looking back at my own project, I think that I was like, never, ever, 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 ever will I look at something that says, well, this is what happened to people bringing their abusers to the justice system and they didn't succeed in a legal setting, and be like, that means it's fake. Because I can tell you from experience, it's so difficult to bring an abusive person into an investigation, particularly a man, particularly, a young man in college, all these things. They don't care. They're not going to do much for you most of the time. We've seen that time and time again, not just at universities, but also in all sorts of other sort of settings. And that, yeah, I was like, there's no, like, just because it's a legal system does not mean that it's fair. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to look at that and be like, well, they're right then. It's just not my logic. And I think these are the little things that you learn over life, just learning from your life experience, that I think that when you don't have the life experience and things have just been all fine and dandy for you, like, you don't really get that sort of depth of information about life. But anyways, I don't know why I was talking about that, to be honest. I don't know how I even got on that topic, but yeah, I guess just thinking about people's judgments and opinions and just being like, I think you should just form your own opinion, and you should not be rigid, okay? You should never be rigid in your opinion. You should always take people's genuine judgments and concerns and things and hold them of value. I think, I think we can also, I think you have to develop a relationship of honesty to yourself, and when something really does resonate and stick and it's true, like, you should be 100%, like, be honest with yourself. And I think that with this conversation with this person also, I think, brought, like, plenty of that as well. But I think that, I've all conversation, I mean, all relationships are extremely complicated. I think there's always two sides to a story. But anyways, but I think it's more, I guess that's also in line with the whole idea of authenticity. And yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think we should also never be afraid to be honest with ourselves about who we are and what our issues are. And I think that that's part of why this has, I think, been such a deep like purging period of my life emotionally, because I think that I've just been really sitting also with my own negative sort of thought processes, negative sort of behaviors, and just being like, whoa, like I think just really sitting with them from in like an honest way, and just seeing myself shifting a lot, and shifting my priorities. I'm gonna pull out my journal that I was writing to my kids. I keep a journal that I write for my children. I'm actually on my second journal already. This journal's been getting a little bit dark. I told them I was going through a purging period right now, and just writing all these like emotional sort of things that have been going on. But it's meant to be for advice, but I was like, I feel like I've just been telling them so many like just things where I'm like, I seem like I don't know anything about the world. But I was like, I actually did consolidate it all into some advice recently, so I'm gonna tell you. Let me find it. My journal. Look at this. Let me show you. Mommy's Book 2025 for my babies. Maybe they'll watch this video one day, I hope. If they do, hello children. But I've been just yapping at them, just writing so much and telling them so many things. Where did it go? Okay. I've been reflecting on, finally, advice, OMG, ... The fact that doing something big, new, amazing, even if it's just in your own life, requires you to be, so this is what I already said, the most vulnerable you've ever been, and get honest with yourself and others about who you really are. And that can be super duper painful, but it'll open you up to more. I felt I was really struggling mentally about the conversation with this person, but then I felt thankful, even though it still feels really raw right now, because it's all just to help me grow and be honest with myself about my life and level up for more. It's good to have someone in your life who challenges you and forces you to confront yourself. I wonder if they see it the same. Not that it matters. I keep telling myself that it doesn't matter for things to be mutual. I've been telling myself this for all of my conflicts. If I made a mistake and I own up to it and accept responsibility on the inside, then I grow, which is always a gift and a cool adventure, and I get to be a different person. If you're perfect and have nothing to change, you just kind of stay the same all the time. Yeah, I guess that's my thought process. It's just like, I think that so often, like, I think like we want like to have this sort of comeback of like, you know, like, oh, but you did this, but you did that. And like, I think it's like sometimes you just gotta be like, no, okay, whatever. And just be like, you know, I think I've been thinking about this so much like the last few years, and just being like, you know, like, I think sometimes you're like, I think like, how to put it? Like, I think sometimes I just get so lost. This has been a really conflicting relationship with a person. But I think sometimes I get so lost in being like, oh my gosh, like, I guess I'm just a villain. Like, I just suck and I'm the worst person ever, because I think I can just, like, see their side and I can just rationalize my way out of everything. And I'm like, do I just suck as a person? And am I just, like, the worst person ever who just sucks? But then I'm like, you know what? Like, let's say that's the truth. Like, as long as you are just owning up to it and just, like, growing from, like, what you think sucks about you and just, like, actually taking responsibility for it in your own life, it doesn't really matter if the other person is perfect and, like, they're just, like, they did everything right and you just did everything wrong and you just suck. It's like, so what? If you're the one who sucks, that's good. Acknowledge it and just, like, grow from it. And then, like, I feel like growth is always just a great thing. Like, I feel like just owning up to, like, your negative, like, emotions about yourself and just sitting with them and being like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with myself and I'm uncomfortable with my own negative, like, things that I've done, and just, like, being like, okay, cool. That's gonna just advance you in life. And as you can see, I'm in a period of massive growth in my life, because I think I've just been really having to be real with myself in the last few years and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna keep changing. And I think also my mental health was just bad, and I was just like, I had to change my mental health so much and just be like, change. Okay, that sucks, that's bad. And just, like, just acknowledging all of these ways that I was just self-sabotaging, hurting myself, like setting myself up for failure and all these things. And it's like, I just like, it's almost exhausting. I think that's kind of why I was in the mentality today, because exactly, I think I've just been like, just every single like insane thought process, like I'm just sitting with them too much sometimes, like just in my own head too much, and just hyper aware of everything that's going on in my head. And I think sometimes that's why I'm like, who am I? Why is it like my sense of self is just completely shattered? I'm just like, oh my god. Because I just get too aware of like everything and trying to fix everything. But I think sometimes it's just like, I think it's been like not bad. I think that's like a good thing to a certain level, because it's like, it means that I think that I've really been setting my life up for success recently, and just not even externally per se, even though that too, but more like internally. I think I've just been getting a good mentality, good attitude for life, and just learning and healing and all these things. And it's like, yeah, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all. And, you know, even if it comes from a bad situation, from a difficult experience with somebody, or from like traumatic experience, it doesn't really matter what the source is. It matters like what the outcome is, you know, like it matters that it's just going to get you to a better place. So I think you should always just take the gift. Like it's just always going to be a gift and just a benefit to you. If you allow everything to be a benefit to you, even if it's just like uncomfortable emotions, the uncomfortable emotions can be of benefit too. um and then you just build this really, really good energy in your life. So yeah, that's everything that I have to say. So I'm gonna go wash my hair.